Hello there, how are you? And welcome back. Well, last week I put up this Magna sign. This week I am building a metal rack from Costco that I purchased and putting my new LiFePo4 batteries on it. Now, suffice it to say, me positioning these batteries on this rack was very typical of a woman trying to place furniture in the home. I probably moved them, without exaggeration, 10 times before I finally came to the final position. Now, the only thing I was not able to do on the actual battery setup itself, I want to find some kind of a rubber coating that's easy enough to remove, or perhaps a clear tape that's easy enough to remove, to cover up all of my positives, just so nothing can inadvertently come down and come in contact with them. Now, as you're seeing here, that was my first attempt, and then I was like, that is not going to work. So this is the final position that I decided that I was going to put them in. The other thing was, because it was on just one shelf, I took a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and you'll see better shots of this later on. Put it across the bottom to really firm that bottom up. I went ahead and put this shelf on here temporarily just so I had a work surface. Boy, do I ever need a workbench. But this actually worked out really great. Now, I went online to Amazon.com, purchased all of my connectors, purchased my 4-gauge wire that I am crimping here. Part of why I didn't use the old wires on my other battery bank, one, I've doubled my size of my battery bank, but two, they say in order for the batteries to be the most efficient, you want all of your positives to be the same length. So I went through, got a measurement, came to the conclusion that 8 inches worked. And then at that point, I just started cutting the wire. And then these crimpers are new, and the tips are adjustable for different size wires, which is great. But once I got it put together, put the heat shrink on it and said, okay, this will work. Boom, it's off to the races. Now, this 4-gauge wire here is like welding wire. It's super small strand. These crimps, because they are brass or copper, they crimp down on there really nice. And then I just used my torch to melt the heat shrink on there. I wish I had a better shot of it in the actual video, but coming up you will see how it worked out. Now, pulled the rack off so I could go ahead and start connecting all of my positives. Just like on a car battery, I opted to go ahead, peel off each one of these posts, had like a piece of protective tape over it. So I went through and started peeling off that protective case. And I'm just going straight 12 volt to 12 volt to 12 volt. So all the positives together, all the negatives together, to keep my battery bank at a true 12 volt system. I know a lot of people say it's not as energy efficient, but I have so many 12 volt appliances that even if I didn't have an inverter, I could still run lights, I could still run pumps. So this is just the direction I opted to go. Now, I put the shelf back on here so I again would have a work surface, but I MacGyvered a piece of wood on the side of this rack. So I pre-drilled it, and then I ran a metal self-tapping screw through it and then into this piece of wood. That way I could mount the battery shutoff on that piece of wood, just to make easy access, and you'll see as we come up here. So now that I have that all figured out how I want it MacGyvered in place, I need to go ahead and get my battery shutoff wires in position. Now these wires are bigger. I went to 2/0 or 2 gauge wires on this. So the batteries coming through are a 4 gauge welding wire. This is the 2 gauge welding wire. Again, used a crimper, and there you see how I was using the tool, or the tool, dark, the torch to go ahead and melt that heat shrink. Now, I was using a lighter on smaller stuff or just real quick stuff, but for that, it seemed like the torch just worked so much better. So here now I have everything sized up. Drill a couple of holes through that wood. That way the only thing on the outside on that left side edge is that battery shut off. There are no immediate wires hanging. It'll just be I think a cleaner setup. You know, I left enough that I have room to change it around if I want to. I can cut things off. I can put another lug on top. I didn't leave like crazy ridiculous amounts of wire, obviously, because the key with solar and using the inverter charger, the shorter your wire distance from your battery box to the charger inverter box, the more efficient it is. So yeah, anyway, so as you can see here, I have it pretty well set up how I want it. There's a little bit of extra wire in there, but that's just in case. And then just mount this to the side of that wood, which is a nice, neat, tidy setup. So on, off, can't beat it. So now I'm just shutting the entire solar system down, and I'm getting the battery box out of the way, and then I'm going to just slide my new battery box in place. Doggone fire ants, you gotta love Florida, golly. Anyway, so this is the service coming down from my midnight solar, and I'll tie this, and I'll tie the other tracer inverter or tracer controller into the positive on my battery bank. Now that's a setup. You know, I don't know what I did with the footage of me attaching my ground wires, but the ground wires attach the same exact way as the positives, and then your positive goes through the shutoff up into the magnesign, and then the ground from the magnesign goes directly to the ground on your battery bank. That's simple, guys. There you have it. Alrighty then, I'll see you next week on how I did it. Have an absolutely wonderful and blessed week. Take care.